In this lesson, we're going to learn how to use the slope formula to calculate the slope of a line. Let's begin with what we already know about slope. We know that slope is a number that describes the steepness and direction of a line. We also know that slope is the change in y over the change in x. We've seen previously that we can calculate the slope by counting the change in y and the change in x from the graph of the function. But what if we don't have a graph and we want to determine the slope? How can we do that? Well, the good news is there is another method. We can take any 2 points from the line. We'll call those points x1 and y1, which represents the first x and y pair, and x2, y2, which represents the second x and y pair, and we can use the slope formula in order to determine the slope. The slope formula is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. M is the letter in mathematics that represents slope. y2 minus y1 is the change in the y values, and x2 minus x1 is the change in the x values. That shouldn't surprise us because slope is change in y over change in x, and that's exactly what this formula finds. Let's take a look at some examples to see how this works. We want to calculate the slope of the line that passes through the 2 points that are given to us. Those points are 4, 3 and 8, 6. In order to calculate the slope, begin by labeling your points x1, y1, which means the first x and the first y, and x2, y2, which means the second x and the second y. Then we write our slope formula. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. You should write this formula every time you use it. Now we substitute the numbers into the formula. y2 is 6, minus y1 minus 3. x2 is 8, minus x1 is minus 4. Now we evaluate the expression. 6 minus 3 is 3. 8 minus 4 is 4. 3 over 4. The change in y over the change in x is 3 over 4. So the slope of this line is 3 over 4. If we were to look at this graph and look at those 2 points, notice that the change in the y value is 3 and the change in the x's is 4. 3 over 4 is the slope. Now let's take a look at another example. We want to calculate the slope of the line that passes through the given points. The points are 2, 1 and 7, 5. The first thing we do is label the points x1, y1 and x2, y2. Notice the x1 and the y1 are together, first x, first y, and the x2 and the y2 are together, second x and second y. Then we write our formula. M, which means slope, equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. See if you can substitute the numbers into the formula and determine the slope of this line. Please pause the video here and come back when you're ready to compare answers. Let's see how you did. We substitute the numbers into the formula. y2 is 5 minus y1, so minus 1. x2 is 7 minus x1 minus 2. Now we evaluate the expression. 5 minus 1 is 4. 7 minus 2 is 5. So the slope of the line and so the slope is negative 1 over 4. Again, if we look at the graph of this function and we plot the 2 points that we were given, and we look at the change in y and the change in x, we see that the y value went down by 1 from negative 2 to negative 3, and the x value went up by 4 from 0 to 4. Change in y over change in x is negative 1 over 4. We get the same answer if we use the graph. Now let's take a look at 2 special cases, the horizontal line and the vertical line. Suppose we have the graph that has the points 5, 2 and 7, 2. We want to calculate the slope, and so we label the points x1, y1 and x2, y2. We write our slope formula, substitute the values into the formula. Y2 minus y1 is 2 minus 2, x2 minus x1 is 7 minus 5, and we evaluate the expression 0 over 2. 0 divided by 2 is simply 0, so the slope of this line is 0. If we look at the graph, we see that we have a horizontal line, and if we look at the change in y, the change in y is nothing. The y value on both points is 2. If we look at the x value changed by 2 from 5 to 7. Change in y over change in x is 0 over 2, which is simply 0. Our last example today will involve a vertical line. Suppose we have a vertical line that has the points 5, 3 and 5, 8. We want to calculate the slope. We label the points x1, y1, x2, y2, and we write our slope formula. Then we perform the substitution. y2 minus y1 is 8 minus 3. x2 minus x1 is 5 minus 5. 8 minus 3 is 5. 5 minus 5 is 0. But we have a big problem. We have division by 0, which is undefined. That means the slope of the graph is undefined. To take a look at that graphically, here's the graph, and we see the 2 points labeled on the graph. If we look at the change in y, the y values went from 3 to 8, which is a change of 5. The x values in both cases were simply 5. The x values didn't change at all. Change in y over change in x, 5 over 0, and because division by 0 is undefined, the slope of this line is undefined. And now you know everything you need to know in order to calculate the slope of a line from 2 points by using the slope formula. You can learn more about linear functions and slope in Mr. Dory's Algebra Handbook, available at www.dorypublications.com.